For sure, we will. We will. And welcome everyone to our tubers webinar this evening. We're so glad that you're here. Thank you so much for your patience as we got some tech things sorted out with our amazing presenters and interpreters. While we settle in, I just do want to acknowledge that language access is really important to the work that we do together, both on our farms and in our community. So as you registered for this event, or if you work with producers in your farming community that would benefit from these types of services, make sure to let us know. We always encourage you to acknowledge that if you during the registration or send us an email, and we want to do our best to make those accommodations available. We're also recording tonight so that farmers that speak Hmong or Spanish as their first language have this amazing information and resources available even after the event. So we're gonna just go through a couple access points here. If you are seeking some of those language supports, you can use caption options this evening. I'm gonna put that in the chat, but you can go to the bottom bar of your Zoom and click on the closed caption icon CC and select your preferred language. I use this often, even in English, because I am a visual learner, and so reading is really helpful. If you're on your phone or tablet, click on your screen and select the three dots, captions, and choose your language. If you would like to listen in a Spanish or Hmong this evening, please follow these instructions, which I'm dropping in the chat. On your computer, you'll go again to the bottom bar of your Zoom screen, select the globe icon, and choose your preferred language. Or if you're on your phone or a tablet, again, tap the screen, select the three dots, interpretation, and choose your language. If you have any questions, please express them in the chat or come off mute if we need to settle that right now, but we're happy to help and try to navigate that as we dig into this amazing conversation tonight. So a couple of housekeeping things is that in our community of learning, our project leads and farmers are all committed to and invite participants to hold the following community guidelines. I'm going to read them aloud, but also put them in the chat. And we ask that if something's missing from this list, you express it as well, so we can hold that and honor it with you all. We ask that you put relationships first, practice trust and respect privacy, create space for multiple truths and norms, notice power dynamics, also sometimes heard as stepping up or stepping back if you're having a loud voice or a quiet voice in the conversation. And finally, staying grounded in our common goals, which I'm really excited to talk about. So I realized I didn't introduce myself. I'm Christine. I am the Farmer Education Coordinator at Michael Fields Agricultural Institute. I'm also a first-generation farmer operating on the state line in Northern Illinois. But here tonight, we're really excited to continue our virtual series talking about staple crops. We throw this term around in many spaces in our programming and field days and educational events, but we wanted to first address the term staple crops, and we know that this doesn't follow a universal definition. So what we start at is we define staple crops as a foundational food source, of food that provides dense caloric and nutritional value, crops or foods that possess characteristics for extended storage and shelf stability, and crops that have broad distribution amongst our communities. We believe that staple crops are vital for enhancing food security and fostering economic stability within our agricultural communities that we live and work. Examples of some of these crops can include grains, legumes like beans, other pulses, starchy root and tuber crops, which we're discussing tonight, and oil seeds. But really, we know that food that is a staple to one person, family, or community may be different to the next person or community. So we really encourage you in this opportunity that we gather together to learn about what food crops you regard as staples or foundational in your farm and kitchens. And we want to know how we can support you in producing and distributing them in your community. So we're going to invite you all to use the chat this evening. This is definitely an open conversation. We're building off lived farm experiences, but we would love for you to drop in the chat your name, where you're calling in from, and any curiosities that you have about staple crops for this evening, if particularly addressing tubers, sweet potatoes, and all things in those relative families. We're excited to dig in there. I'll let you all handle that introduction on your own because I want to also introduce our project partners. We are working within the Southern Lake Michigan Food Shed to help and support farmers growing these types of crops. So introducing, and if you can wave, Hagen from Michigan Food and Farming Systems is our partner in Michigan. So if you're a farmer calling in from there, they're going to be your best asset. Fresh with Fresher Together and Chicago Bread Club is serving farmers in the Chicago Food Shed region as well as Northern Indiana. And they are your best support person in that area. And then Stephen is the farm director at Fondy Food Center and Farm in Milwaukee. And they are your best support for farmers in southern Wisconsin or the greater Wisconsin area. If you're new to this community, we really encourage you to reach out. We're here to provide direct support, and we want to be in conversation. Before we get started, I just want to acknowledge that today has been a whirlwind, like most starts of the farming season are. We had two, and we have two great presenters on the call this evening. One of our other farmers that was supposed to join us this evening had a family medical emergency, but I think the reality is that this is not it's not uncommon for things to shift as we farm and learn and grow together. So I just wanted to spend a couple minutes grounding us in this reality of the profession that we have chose or have fallen into, and that is farming. And I would love for you all to either share in the chat or come off mute. How is your farming season going? And what do you do when the plan changes? So we really want to hear from you all, get together, know where we're standing, and then we're going to dig into some of this really great content. So I'll drop that prompt in the chat, but I encourage a couple folks, maybe two or three, to come off mute and say, how is your season starting? And how do you handle those curveballs that we often see at this time of year, or any time of year, to be honest?
First, I freak out. Ah! And then I just take a deep breath and I'm like, okay, whatever. It's been
Yeah.
17 years for me, but finally I'm just like, okay, it'll probably all work out in the end.
Let it shake out after the anxiety hits. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Thanks, Laura. Anyone else want to pop in, share how their season's starting and how you manage or handle a curveball when you experience it in the growing season?
Do I need to be on the video?
No, you do not.
I think I'm still in the beginning stage because what I did for a lot of years was get the community cleaned up and beautification in the community. So I do have some volunteers that's staying over there, and um I guess it got hot so quickly for me. And I did plant a lot of seeds, tomatoes, zucchini, the squash. We did some corn. Um, I'm supposed to do the sunflower seeds, the three sisters or something. The corn, the beans. I did the beans, and I guess I have to do the sunflowers next to them. And I do have a lot of perennial stuff that came back, and the community garden and the garden is looking much better because we have to focus also on beautification so we won't get tickets in the community. So
Mm,
it's going. I wish I had and now I kind of have, I might have too many zucchinis because we did the seeds and I didn't know whether how good the seeds were. And then I started buying the plants. So, so far so good. The negative thing um, would probably be the deer comes and pull out some of my plants, and I'm trying to come up with a lady said that you take some rope and put around the perimeter and put some metal tin foils or something out there so because they claim the deer doesn't see that well, to help them from being in the area. And then we have rabbits, and I guess you call them hedgehogs as well, so trying to figure out how to address them. So we put out pepper, and then I was looking the other day to put some borax out for around the edge for certain insects that might crawl through. And so I think that's about, and learning about how to handle the tomato plants too. Not too much water, and they say put banana, molasses. They
mm,
did talk about the rice water for and some other items that you can use to make the tea out of, and then dilute it and then pour it on the soil so the microorganism can keep multiplying. So that's,
amazing.
yep,
Yeah, it sounds like you have a lot of companion planting in place to support the farm ecosystem that you're raising and also prioritizing how it feels and looks is
yeah.
a great
And then
tool.
I have a mentor, maybe two mentors, and I have to visit their sites. We went to a couple of sites, and I have to plant my fruit trees. I had got a lot of fruit trees that's still under warranty, but two of them I think died because the deer came over the winter and kind of mutilated it. Both of them. So I'm gonna see, can I take them back for the warranty? But I still have a lot of other ones to plant. So we did put the poles and the wiring around it. So hopefully that'll help keep them from disturbing them.
Yeah, you got a lot of action items. Thank you for sharing.
Hmm.
Does anyone else want to share? One more person share how their season's starting, and kind of how you're navigating some of those uh, unexpected moments that we have been experiencing in the Midwest, whether it's climate or otherwise. Well, I will just share briefly that one of the things I do on the farm is just to prioritize attention. I feel like I lose focus if I try to juggle too many balls. So figuring out where I can find support and delegate tasks to my farm partners or other community members, or just like let things go has been really huge. And that, and then, yeah, also, as y'all just said, like kind of enjoying actually what's in front of you. So that's an important piece of farming, in addition to all those mitigation techniques that we're gonna maybe dig into tonight. So, all right. If you just joined, feel free to use the chat as we move forward. I'm gonna introduce our presenters, and we're really excited to have them here because the thing that we know is most impactful as farmers, is learning from each other, and that's why we host these events. So I'd love to introduce Laura and Ben. Laura will be sharing their experience growing sweet potatoes into other tubers on their farm. And then Ben will also share their experience. But just so you have a little bit of context for who these folks are and how we can engage with them and ask questions. Laura has been operating Orange Cat Community Farm for 17 years in Sauk County, Wisconsin. She grows 3 acres of certified organic vegetables, marketed primarily through a CSA, including sweet potatoes, which are her absolute favorite crop. And also, we are so stoked to have Ben here at the kind of 11th hour, but know that they are a huge impact in their community and growing amazing food in the south suburbs of Chicago. So Ben is the co-owner and manager of Earthfloor Farm. It's a first-generation family-run farm growing organic produce, connecting people to land 70 miles south of Chicago in Iroquois County. He's bringing 14 years of experience from the nonprofit side and 7 years of experience in running rural farms of various scales. He's also the chapter coordinator of Northern Illinois Young Farmers and has worked on projects like the Chicago Lights Urban Farm, Windy City Harvest Program Instructor, Chicago Park District, and serving and supporting diversified vegetable farms across the Midwest and East Coast. I'd love to welcome Laura to the screen. Please use the chat, put your questions in. We might pull some of them up as it's relevant through the conversation, but we're going to hold space at the end of both of our presenters to answer some of those questions more deeply. And yeah, thank you. So Laura, you're up.
Awesome. Thank you. Yes, I am very excited to talk about sweet potatoes. It wasn't hard to put together a presentation. Let me share my screen here. Share and did that work? Choose.
Not yet. I'm gonna try
Okay,
one
it
more
was
time.
just working. Oh, oh,
Oh, I see it loading. Yep,
look
you're
at
there.
that. We did it. Okay. Um, yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about potatoes too. I do some potatoes. I actually cut potatoes out of my crop plan last year, and I'll tell you why. But sweet potatoes just get more and more space in the field. But I do have a lot of experience growing the potatoes, at least at my scale. Like Christine said, I'll flip here. I'm Laura More and More from Orange Cat Community Farm. That is the namesake orange cat from the farm. And this is a mega sweet potato harvest. Yeah, my farm is about 3 acres. It is pretty, I do have some tractors and stuff, and I do lay like plastic mulch, but I always say that I am like at the large end of a small farm. um I don't do everything by hand, but I'm not mechanized in my, like, I don't have cultivating tractors, and we're like hand transplanting everything too. So um yeah, that's kind of the scale that I'm at. And yeah, and this is our 17th season, and I've been growing sweet potatoes the whole time. Um, okay, that's my first slide. I love sweet potatoes. Basically, I just love plants and growing vegetables. And then when they get so big and gorgeous like that, how do you not just like fall in love every single year during the harvest? So there's a lot of like sweet potato, like, just pictures of sweet potatoes in the presentation. And a couple different methods I've used growing them over the years. So first I just wanted to show you guys my fields and the field prep. Um, the potatoes and sweet potatoes are a little bit different. Potatoes are a crop that you can plant like right away in the spring. Some people try to get them, in the ground on Good Friday or whatnot. And so they don't mind the, a little bit cooler ground. The sweet potatoes are very sensitive to the cold weather. So the sweet potatoes, you don't plant until usually around the first week of June here in Wisconsin, in South Central Wisconsin is where I'm at. You might get them in a little bit sooner if you're south of me. But this is so the potatoes often are going in on soil that is maybe bare from the previous fall that didn't have a cover crop on it because I'm getting into it first thing in the spring. But something like the sweet potatoes that I'm putting in June, like step one is probably tilling in a cover crop of vetch that I had growing over the winter. And then adding some organic fertilizers. I spread some composted poultry manure and some fertilizers from Midwest BioAg. My potatoes I grow on the bare ground. At least I did when I grew the potatoes. And the sweet potatoes I grow on plastic mulch, which you can see in the picture there. I do have a plastic mulch layer. I think that's just, anyway, so that's sort of like prepping, getting ready. I'm, at my small farm, I just have a tiny little cute little Kubota tractor that I use for everything. It's kind of like a little tractor and a rototiller and nothing too fancy. So I have a nice kind of silt loam, lighter soil, which is nice, really nice for growing these tuber crops. Potatoes, I think, can do pretty well in a variety of soils. I do know that some of my colleagues, like the sweet potatoes, they grow really well in my soil type. And I know some of my colleagues over the years have expressed how they just they plant sweet potatoes and they just don't grow well. And I think it might be, they have different soil types than I do. So it's possible that if you have trouble growing them, it might be your soil type. A heavier clay soil, I think, is a little bit more challenging. But they love a nice silt loam. So that's a early spring photo of my farm. Let's see what's next. Okay, so this is the potatoes. I'll talk about planting the potatoes first. If you guys can see, I know we have all sorts of different probably levels of experience on the call, which is awesome. You can see in the top picture the seed potatoes that I'm planting. What we do when we get the seed potatoes in the spring, I like to leave them out in my pack shed to warm up and to try to start getting little sprouts on the potatoes. Technically that's called chitting. I don't think I'm actually chitting them very much, but I like to get them not cold, and so they're like wanting to grow. And then we cut the potatoes into 2-ounce seed pieces with some eyes on all of them. Fun fact, potatoes are elongated shoot tips if we're talking about just staple crops and tubers. But a sweet potato is actually root tissue. But anyway, that's why. But the potatoes have little sprouts on them because they're actually stem tissue, and then they grow little plants off of the stem. Anyway, that's a fun fact. So this is we plant the potatoes. I used to dig a furrow and plant them a little deeper in the ground, but I just don't have my equipment for the potato growing just wasn't really that great. Hence, I stopped growing them after a while. But we used to dig a furrow and try to plant them a little bit deeper, but it just didn't work really that well with my equipment. So we just started tilling the ground and then like punching them, jabbing them into the ground with our hands, because we'll come back later and hill them up to make them deeper. We usually plant the potatoes. I planted most everything at a foot, but you can play around with the spacing a little bit, and it might getting a tighter spacing might give you smaller, more smaller potatoes versus a larger spacing. But I think like a foot is pretty average, pretty normal spacing for most potatoes. And then we're planting them about the rows are 3 feet apart, if you can see there. Yeah. And then when we're planting the sweet potatoes, on the other hand, you guys can't see me. I have a little slip I can show you. Instead of planting the actual potato, you plant a sweet potato slip, which is, they call them slips because they grow, I think they plant sweet potatoes down in North Carolina and they let them grow the shoots, and then they pull the shoots off of the sweet potatoes or cut them off. I'm not sure. It'd be fun to go down and see how they do it. But and then what you do is plant the stem, the little sweet potato plant. Like there's no roots on it. It's just like a bare maybe like 8 or 10 inch piece of sweet potato stem. And so what we're doing here, and you just stick it in the ground and then let it grow. I like to grow them on the plastic mulch because, in an organic system, the weeds are a bit of an issue, and I'm not mechanically cultivating. So without that sort of equipment, the plastic mulch really aids in weed control at the farm. When we're planting the sweet potato slips, what we do, it wasn't in one of the pictures, but basically we take a big stake, it's a little stake from an irrigation riser, and we just make a deep hole and then stick the sweet potato slip in there. In the past, I would do, if you can see on one of the photos, I would do 2 rows on the plastic mulch. So kind of the equivalent like the potatoes, the 3 feet apart. I changed that at some point to doing 1 row on my bed of plastic mulch, and that was purely a harvesting, for the ease of harvesting, because again, it was an equipment issue. I couldn't, anyway, so now I'm doing 1 row and they're all 5 feet apart, but it was purely to fit my equipment for harvesting. Let's see, when you're doing the sweet potato slips, something that's interesting, and I haven't done any trials, but the sweet potatoes come off of the nodes of the slip. And so your goal is to try to plant like as many nodes as you can, I think. So you want to plant it deep, but you can kind of plant it sort of horizontally or at an angle, so that you can get more nodes of that stem in the dirt, and then maybe you'll get like a bigger yield. I don't know. It's maybe someday I'll try to play around with that and do a little trial, but be interesting.
Laura, could I ask a question?
Yeah.
Someone had asked about plastic mulch and the purpose or benefits, and I think you answered that. But if you have any more comments about how that
Yeah.
changes your approach to planting sweet potatoes over other crops. And also, I have been told that you should like re-sprout your potato slips before planting. Is that like, or do you find that you don't need any root attack at activity on the slip itself before you put it in the field?
Yeah. Okay. I'll address that one first. The sprouting of the sweet potato slips. Um, no, you do not need to um, try to get roots on your sweet potato slips before you plant them. I'm not sure how you would do that necessarily. Um, they will grow. Sometimes the slips actually they get kind of hot and if anything is not good, the plastic mulch can get too hot and sometimes they practically like will die, but then they will whatever is still buried in the ground will kind of sprout back. My thoughts on rooting them first is that I'm assuming you would probably maybe like put them in like a bucket of water or something and try to get them to root like that. um I have a horticulture degree, and not that that means like a whole lot, but I'm just having this memory from like a lecture in some class one time, like that sometimes those roots, like if you're sprouting something, those roots that are just growing in water, they're not necessarily really hardy. And then when you plant the stuff, they don't necessarily just translate into like roots growing in the dirt again because they were kind of, water roots.
Yeah,
So
so a water root is not necessarily a node for a plant, is what you're saying.
yeah, well, I've never tried to root the plants before I planted them, and you just don't need to.
Okay.
Once they get in the soil, they'll start growing roots from from the stem. So yeah, a myth. It's not
Oh,
necessary to do that.
great.
Or necessarily better. I mean, you could, but I don't know that I don't know that you're getting an advantage um
Sure.
necessarily. Plastic mulch, the advantage is one, it's not just an advantage of the plastic mulch, but an advantage of having a raised bed is just the warmer temperature that you get in that bed. Just the fact that it is raised and not, in the mass of the earth, it's like has a chance to warm up a little more, gives the plants, not just sweet potatoes, but a lot of our plants just kind of love growing in that raised bed. Um, and that raised bed also is helpful. I find it really mitigates or mediate. I don't know what the right word is. Mitigate, mediate, both, probably both. Ameliorate, probably all those words. The effects, of extreme weather to some degree. Like if it gets really rainy, having that raised bed is nice because your plants don't get bogged down in the soil. They have a little island of raised bed to live in. um and recently in the past years, like the weather events are just so extreme that I really appreciate growing on raised beds because it just helps kind of mitigate some of those kind of climate issues. Um and yeah, and the warmth and the weed control honestly is probably the biggest one. I did want to say, when I first started the farm like 15 years ago, I didn't have a plastic mulch layer, and I grew sweet potato slips, but I made a dirt hill with my walk behind tractor. I had an attachment, and then I planted the sweet potato slips into the bare soil, but it was in a mounded hill, so it was kind of like a raised bed. And they did exceptionally well on that bare ground as well. So you do not need the plastic mulch to grow sweet potatoes. Some people, I think, yeah, might think that that's necessary, like in these more northern, states that we're in. But I don't think it necessarily is. But it might depend a little bit on your site. Like my farm has a nice southern exposure, like a southern slope. So my farm's just a nice, cozy, warm place, and the sweet potatoes seem to do really well. Yeah, does that answer the plastic mulch
I think
question?
so. Yeah.
Yeah,
Someone
I would.
asked, what's
Yeah.
the method for planting at an angle if there's already plastic in place? But then we can move ahead.
Okay, yeah. Well, I just take this big spike and instead of sticking it straight down in the dirt, I stick it in at like a 45-degree angle. And um if that makes sense, and then kind of plant them like in preparation for this, I googled that because it's a curiosity I have as well. And I found some video from like an extension agent in North Carolina, and he's like, you can either plant them straight up and down, like that's fine. But he was saying even like laying them flat in a like almost like a trench, like planting them shallowly and very horizontal. I would say this is a thing to experiment with. I want everyone to go out and to plant 5 sweet potato slips straight down and like 5 of them like really horizontally or something. I don't know. But that's what the extension agent from North Carolina said. And I'd heard stuff like that. I just haven't played around with it enough to like know, see a difference or not necessarily. Yeah. Um that's sweet potato. The one thing that I do not like about sweet potato slips and black plastic mulch is it sometimes you get the slips and you get one of these really hot days and you want to plant the slips because they should get in the ground right away. But it's 80 degrees out, or 90 degrees out sometimes, and then that means that plastic mulch is like 140 degrees. It just gets really hot. And oftentimes some of those slips will, they'll die off. You go out there and they just look like they are dead.
Oh, did we perhaps get a freeze on Laura? Is anyone else experiencing that?
You're planting.
Oh,
I actually increased or decreased my spacing. I plant them 1 foot apart, and then I decreased my spacing to like 10 inches. And that was just to get a few more plants in the ground to make up for any like plants that were lost, to the heat and the plastic mulch. But um, crop maintenance, I just was showing the one photo just has a picture like I have a drip irrigation system set up. So that's basically my growing system is a plastic mulch. And then I actually put the landscape fabric in between the pathways as a weed barrier. On the right, you can see I used to use hay mulch as a in between the pathways around the sweet potatoes and other plants too, my tomatoes, peppers, all sorts of stuff. And so kind of whatever materials you have around for some mulch for weed barriers. On the sweet potatoes, the main thing that's like amazing about crop maintenance on the sweet potatoes is like there isn't much. So you have to weed them. At least here in Wisconsin, I do not have any insect pests on my sweet potatoes. And I also don't have any fungal or disease pressures, which it might be the one crop at my farm that I don't have pest issues with. So honestly, that's part of the reason I love growing them. And then they just like once they get weeded, I weed the holes on the plastic mulch. Then it's just like just waiting until September to harvest, and the vines just turn into a massive sea of sweet potato vines. There is some disease. My very first year, I had a disease called scurf, which is just a cosmetic. It's a cosmetic issue on the actual sweet potato. It gets like a black spotting, but it's not really a rotten, like you can still eat it. It's just cosmetically not appealing to market them. But that scurf is something that comes in on your sweet potato slip, so that's why you should get slips from like a reputable source, because there might be, those slips could have some disease on them. I do get my sweet potato slips from Jones Family Farm in North Carolina. It's an organic sweet potato slip farm. Kansas State also has a program of selling organic sweet potato slips. There might be some other non-organic sources, but I am a certified organic farm. And you can try growing. I worked at a farm once and we grew our own slips. We planted sweet potatoes in the greenhouse in flats of soil, and we grew our own slips. And then in June we plucked them off of the sweet potatoes and planted them in the field. So that was kind of fun. You can play around with that too. I would say potatoes, on the other hand, have so much crop maintenance that after 15 years, I cut them out of my plan. They're a little bit tougher and there's a lot of disease, just a little bit harder to grow. At least for me. And if you get the right equipment, I think that can help out. But you can see, I always did my potatoes on bare ground, so that means they were always a big weeding job. You can see on the left the little potatoes popping up, and I think what I would do is go through with like stirrup hose and have the crew weed in between all the potato plants. And then I would use my walk behind Troy-Bilt rototiller and rototill in between the paths, both to weed them, but also to loosen the soil, because then I would go through and hill them. And my tractor was just small enough that I got this, I bought a thing from like Farm and Fleet, these 2 discs to hill the potatoes. But when you have smaller equipment, sometimes it just doesn't work as well necessarily, because it's just kind of lightweight. And when you need to move a lot of soil, having lightweight equipment maybe it doesn't work as well as it should. So it was always a little bit of a challenge getting it to work well, but it always also worked. So, it was fine. I got the potatoes hilled, but it was a lot of work. It was always a big project to get them weeded and then rototill them and then hill them and then lay drip irrigation on them. And then they would be really gorgeous right about now. This is what I have, a few out in the field right now, and they're flowering. But then you also had to worry about the Colorado potato beetles. These photos are from the very first year I ever grew potatoes, and I was just fascinated. I was like, this is amazing. These guys are so cute. But they're quite devastating to your potato crop. And for several years, I just picked them off. I was a little bit smaller farm, and I was like, I don't want to use any organic pesticides even. So I picked off a lot of potato beetles, but after a few years, I looked up, an organic spray to use, because they just get kind of out of control, and they'll just devastate the crop. And so now, if I have potatoes out in the field, I will spray a organic pesticide called Entrust, which is a spinosad, and it works on the potato beetles. And I'll do that once. And then stuff gets ready to harvest. The potato vines will die back naturally. And senesce, and then then they're ready to harvest. It looks like there's a weed whacker in the background. Usually I'll mow, or apparently when I was this was like the very first garden I ever had at the farm. So if you have a small area, take a weed whacker and just whack up, when they've died back enough, you can whack them off. And then I usually just let them hang out in the ground until I'm ready to harvest, ready to dig them. I think leaving them in the ground for a little bit lets the skins kind of set and not be so fresh. So it's all right to just and then we work all the way through, like, October, just, whenever we have time, go out and dig a row of potatoes. One other thing, the potatoes do have quite a bit of disease pressure. And late blight is now an issue in our area. So, and I'm not far from a lot of potato growers, so I always had to pay close attention to the late blight report. And sometimes I would mow the crop off like a little early just to prevent any inoculation of the late blight disease. I forked them a lot by hand when I was first starting, but then you're like, after a while, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna get a bigger piece of equipment. And then I use a furrower and on the back of my tractor. But oh, those are pretty potatoes. This is my very first garden on the left, and my mom and my sister helping me dig my very first potatoes that I ever grew. So that's just a fun throwback picture. Let's see. Yeah, and then sweet potato harvest. Well, I'll get on with this because there's some cool videos. Oh my God, I think that's last year. I'm pretty sure. We had a great harvest last year. If you can see, there's a little furrower. I have some cool videos. So this is how I go about harvesting my sweet potatoes. First, Bridget, it is a little laborious because the vines are so massive. And in order to get all of that plastic mulch and landscape fabric out, you have to go through and like snip the vines. So I call it like unzippering. And then what do we do? Oh, then we pull up all that landscape fabric.
Yes.
And it's still a little laborious. And then the plastic mulch, at least at my farm, just really comes up quite easily and just pops right up. Oh, yeah. I can't wait till September. No, this is making me want to harvest sweet potatoes. Okay. This one. Okay, this is not OSHA certified, but they're a little tricky to dig with the furrower. Because you can sometimes like scratch them up or cut them off because they grow in these like huge clumps. So it can be a little tricky. But if you fork them by hand, it's very laborious because they're just in these big clumps. And it's easy to fork them. So I just do it with the furrower like that. And then once we've furrowed them like that, then we go by and you can kind of pluck them off their clumps, and then we just crate them up. We try to take really careful, attention to not scratch them up because the skins are pretty tender, and I grow enough that they store for me all winter. But if they get scratched up, they just don't store as well because there's dings on them. So we are very gentle with them when we're crating them up. Oh, this
Sweet
is another.
potatoes.
This is just.
Hi, Olga. Ah, look at this big sweet potatoes. Yay! Oh, hey Sam, what's up?
Hey, just,
I think we were just having fun. That's just. It's a fun day. It looks like we'd been harvesting sweet potatoes all day long. There's one. Oh, this is the one I wanted to show you. This is kind of a fun little time lapse of unzipping and pulling everything out and crating them up. There we go.
This is amazing. Thank you, Laura.
Yeah.
Just a couple more minutes left to share,
Yeah.
so we can let Ben present as well. Just want to give you a heads up, but we'll get
Absolutely.
to questions soon too.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just say one thing then about storing the sweet potatoes, because the one thing that's different between the potatoes and the sweet potatoes is potatoes, you can kind of just keep them out of the light and store them. Sweet potatoes, they do, if you look it up, every place will tell you they need to be cured. They're not sweet coming right out of the ground, and you need to cure them. And I think a lot of references say like even at like 90 degrees for like a couple days, and then they should be like cured. Well, I didn't have that sort of situation. And the very first year I grew them, I looked up, I Googled something, and somewhere it said you can cure them at a lower temperature, like, 75 degrees. It'll just take longer. Like, so leave them at like 75 degrees for like 2 weeks instead of 90 degrees for 2 days. So I have a big insulated pack shed. This is like just, I would say, an asset I have at my farm, and I had it from the beginning because there was an insulated garage. So I harvest those sweet potatoes, and then they just go into my pack shed in the stacks there, and then I just let them sit there. They don't go into, do not put them in the cooler. They will rot if they get put in the cooler. They need to be stored like above like 55 degrees or so. So I'll harvest them, and then I let them sit there for 2 weeks. And then after that, I start washing them and selling them and eating them and etc. And then they will store over the winter. I don't know what this video is. Oh, this is me washing them. Again, I try to handle them really carefully so they don't get dinged, scratched up. So we're just kind of real gentle with washing them. And this is on the right. I turned a walk-in cooler into a warm cooler over the winter. So I put a heater in there and a thermostat, and I store the sweet potatoes and some squash, warm in a warm space. I used to bring them into my house. So this is the picture on the left is my living room before I had enough cooler space to have a warm cooler out in my pack shed. But then now I have mice in my house. And then this is them through marketing them through the winter through a winter share. These are just videos of me and sweet potatoes. There's one I kind of like to show. It's kind of cultural, but maybe at the end I have a sweet potato song. But I find it an interesting phenological, cultural sort of thing. And this too is a cultural thing. I don't know. My sister lives in Japan. This is my nephew there. And when I was visiting, this is just kind of neat. They had harvested the rice paddy. I think this is the husks from all of the rice. So this gentleman is, I think, making like biochar out of his rice husks under a low, like he just keeps this, there's like probably a little stove under there with a little fire, and he's just slowly charring that. And then they put a sweet potato wrapped in tin foil, and he just shoves it in the pile all day. And then then it turns into this sweet, gooey, delicious sweet potato thing. Anyway, that's my sweet potato cultural reference. um, all right. And
Wow.
that's just sweet
Yeah.
potatoes.
No, they are amazing. The enthusiasm is well seen. If we have time at the end, we're gonna come back to the sweet potato song for sure.
Yes, it's my dad singing the song.
Oh my
Yeah,
God,
you
that's
got it.
okay. We'll make time for that. Thank you so much, Laura. Really appreciate you sharing. We have a handful of questions in the chat, but I'm gonna hold them to the side. And if you want to jump in the chat now while Ben's presenting too, to kind of review and answer some of those offline, that would be great. Ben, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're so excited for you to share your experience growing other tuber on your farm and how you market it. So go away.
Okay.
Or go ahead. Go ahead. Yes.
Hello, everybody. I am Ben Jaffe from Earthlore Farm. Christine already did the introduction. And can you all see this on your screen, first of all?
We're in loading mode, but it looks like it's coming.
Okay, and actually, while that's loading, Christine, how much time should I leave at the end for questions? I know we only have 20 left, so should I try to keep this to how many minutes?
Let's aim for 15,
Okay.
if possible. I'll be around, if you can hang on for a couple minutes. If not, we'll gather questions and send them by email, and we can resend to the group as well. So want you
Yeah.
to share your experiences for sure.
Yeah, okay. So I am gonna come from the perspective of here's how I've grown potatoes over the years on a variety of scales, and I've grown them on very small urban farm scales. I've been on 30-acre farms where I've been on crews where it's been very mechanized, and then our own farm, which I'll talk about really briefly, we grow on an acre and a half or less. And some years it's been way less than an acre and a half, closer to a half, 3/4 acre. Um, and so I'm going to try to get at ways to do this um, if you don't have much equipment, and ways to do this even if you do have a little bit of equipment, and both the successes but also the ways we've done it really wrong. And I think that's something a lot of people don't talk about, whether in their Instagram posts or on their websites, is, nobody likes to talk about the hard lessons learned. But I think it's really important that we do that as growers, as farmers, because everyone's making mistakes every year. We just don't always see it. So are you
And
all
I
seeing?
have a recommendation. Would you mind if I share your slides and you can just tell me when to advance?
Oh, yeah, you're not seeing it yet. Oh, weird.
No, it's not loading. Sorry.
Yeah, it says your screen sharing is paused, but I didn't pause it. Um, okay. I will,
I'm gonna try.
yeah, go for it. While you're pulling that up, basically, we are Northern Iroquois County, and we are just around the corner. We are neighbors to Fresh and Fresher Together. And our soil is also really perfect for tubers in general. We have a sandy loam, and it's about a 70% sand. And there are some big potato operations in our area. And that is a cool thing because it's not just all corn and beans, but it also means that those populations of Colorado potato beetles in our area are probably through the roof, even if those big operations are spraying a lot. Um, and so I'll cut to the end of the story. Similar to Laura, full disclosure, this is the first year in many years we are not growing potatoes. And I don't mean to dissuade you from growing potatoes, and I'll give you some, some tips on how to do this in very low till and very, smaller scale ways. But I will say that like context is that we are like a diversified farm, like so many of you. We're growing so many different crops and 25, 30 different crops and 40, 50 varieties. So our choice about what to grow is not so much always based on what our customers want, but it's based in what we think we can do well and what our customers want. And everyone loves a potato. I grow a potato in my slides, but it's a question of, do you have either the good soil for it? Do you have the labor for it? And maybe do you have the machinery for it, as Laura kind of had alluded to. And so what I have done over the years is everything from growing, an eighth acre, which is about 5,000 square feet, all by hand. We've done it with a BCS type walk behind tractor. And for those that have those BCS tractors, that they have different implements that you could use. And I think the one Laura was probably referring to from years ago, but one we still use sometimes, is a rotary plow. Ours is a Berta rotary plow, and we also have a rototiller. And if you have one of those things can work great for essentially shooting soil up in one direction and coming back, making a pass and shooting it back up to make yourself a hill. But one thing I'll say, and Christine, I'm not seeing the presentation, so I'm just going to keep talking. But if I'm ready anytime if you do pull it up. One thing I will
On my
say
screen, I just want to
is,
flag that for you. So I'm not sure where you want me to be.
oh,
Sorry. Yeah. Is everyone seeing slides or is that not available for
Yeah, we
folks?
can see it.
Okay.
okay, sweet. I didn't see it, but okay. Yeah, okay, I see it in a certain way. Um, okay, I see you're on all the stuff about our farm. I think for the sake of time, you can go on to the next screen and maybe everyone's already read that. And that is where we are located. Yeah, went over that. So keep going. Um, and yeah, that's just a little bit about us. We do some camps and we do retail through a CSA and farmers market and wholesale to different places. I already talked a little bit about the diversity of crops that we grow. And so if you skip ahead a little bit, Christine, there's one that says steps to spuds, I think. One thing that I just want to, highlight is that how you prepare your soil is really important. And everyone talks about potatoes being a very weedy crop, and it's very true because you can't really grow them on plastic. You can't really grow them with landscape fabric easily, at least, although I'm sure there's people out there that have tried. And so the other reason why potatoes can be such a weedy crop is that you want a very loose soil for those tubers to develop. But in order to get a loose soil, you're probably turning your soil over multiple times, whether with a rotavator, whether with a rotary plow on the BCS, or even by hand. And we all know that turning soil brings up weed seeds. So I will say that it's worthwhile thinking through now, if you're going to grow potatoes next year, what can you do in the fall, which is wishful thinking, I know, but to prepare your soil, your field, your beds for potatoes. And in an ideal world, you're able to hill, whether with a tractor or by hand, that soil in the fall and give it time for weed seeds to germinate, either late fall or early spring, and then to do a couple passes of what some people call a stale seedbed approach, where you let those weeds germinate and then you kill them off. The other way to do it would be to make your beds, make your furrows, your hills, whatever your approach is. And then if it's something that is no bigger than 100 by 50-foot area, you could cover that whole thing with a silage tarp, which I know some of us use. Again, what that's doing is bringing up all of the weed seeds and causing them to germinate and die off in the absence of light. That's really hard to do on small scale farms because usually all of our fields and beds are taken up with crops in the fall. But give it some thought and see if that's possible. And that is just one thing I recommend thinking about as a low-till approach to growing potatoes that may reduce your weed pressure come fall. Sorry, come the next year. Go to the next slide, Christine. And so here's just a few of the ways that we have prepared soil. I mentioned the BCS. When we scaled up 4 years ago, we did get a 40-horse small John Deere tractor and then started to get some implements for it. And so what you're seeing here is a 6-foot disc on the back. And I do like using that disc because it's not really inverting soil layers deep, but it does chop up the soil. And one thing that I do is when I have prepared beds, fields for potatoes in the past, I take those two front gangs, they're called the gang of 4 to 5 discs on one axle, and I put them at a sharper angle so that when I run down our field, it's actually pushing soil in and hilling as I go. Um, and so I had 1 year of using that to prepare, and then also using our bed shaper. So the same thing that Laura talked about, where I took off the shaper pan but used offset discs, and I used that for hilling after the spuds had sprouted, and it was still small enough that I could drive over it with the tractor and with that implement. But I've also done lots of hand hilling just with a bed prep rake where I rake up that soil. I weed it first and then hilling. Um, and this is a picture of cutting potatoes. I do a very similar process to Laura where I keep them in the pack shed where they're nice and warm, and I let those sprouts emerge after 4 to 5 days. I will caution you to not let potatoes sprout and get too long, or those eyes that sprout will start breaking off in your bulb crates and when you plant. Go to the next slide. Mostly I tried to have this heavy on the pictures. So this is a picture of planting. You've got your furrow. We've got a single row pictured here. Same deal, 12 inches apart. And then you can see what that looks like before we cover those up. This is this year, these pictured, we were doing this all by hand after planting. So we would just rake the soil over. These are 100-foot long beds. And what's not pictured is irrigation. And I will touch on that is usually when you're planting potatoes in late April or May, there's a lot of rain, but not always. At least in central Illinois, before last week's storms, we had close to a 3-week drought. And you need to be set up to give things like potatoes and the rest of your crops, of course, water. So I will run a double line of drip irrigation down a single row of potatoes and run that drip in the event that we need to, especially at the sprouting stage. Next slide. Oh, and I know I list, and that's past slide, I listed 2 row. I do want to say briefly that on a certain scale, everybody grows potatoes 1 row because it makes the hilling easier and it makes a lot of things easier. I have grown on urban farms and even on a rural farm. I have done some experiments with growing a double row per 30-inch bed top, still potatoes planted at 1 foot apart in the row, and therefore they're probably about 15 to 18 inches apart, the rows of 15 to 18 inches apart. I've had pretty good yields that way, and you still hill your outside rows of the bed. I don't hill the inside because there seems to be enough soil that I can rake up over from the pathways into the beds. And I will say I had really good yields with this on a 3/4 acre urban farm where we would plant them in double rows. I will say, certain varieties work better for this, and variety selection is a whole discussion, but the new potatoes, the fingerling potatoes, anything that's a small and usually an early or mid-season potato will do okay in that 2 row setup. Um, and just the less time in the ground, the better, because there is competition for nutrients, water, et cetera, with 2 rows. These pictures you're seeing just are how our potatoes looked, probably about 6 weeks after planting. I can't see closely, but I don't think they're flowering yet. You can go to the next slide. I'll just say that overall, the harvesting for us, it has always been done by hand. Oh yeah, so pest and disease. So what I started off by saying that we don't grow potatoes this year, it is really because of the Colorado potato beetle. That being said, it's also about us and our own ability to manage a crop that is so susceptible to a pest amidst all the other crops. That Colorado potato beetle, I'll just describe last year what I did. Um, we first started hand picking. I thought we had scouted pretty early. What's pictured here on the left is the larvae, and you might look up Colorado potato beetle and see the adult pictures, but don't look for those white striped hard-shelled adults. I mean, look for those, but when they start to lay the first generation, that's what those larvae look like, and they look cute. As Laura said, they are definitely not cute, and they are very hard to pick when they get to that stage. The eggs are pictured on the right. And I'll just say briefly that one of the many things we did last year was we handpicked, we put them, crushing them, putting in the soapy water. When we realized that wasn't working because we just couldn't keep up, we did do a spinosad spray. I even tried an alternating spray schedule with, I was reading about BT, which I generally try not to use, but even an alternating spray schedule didn't do it. We pretty much lost our crop last year to those pests. And there's a lot of evidence that is showing that some areas, the Colorado potato beetle is resistant to certain sprays. So I'll just mention briefly one idea that came from a farm that I follow that's in Vermont, is they go through with tennis rackets and they whack the beetles from the plants, 2 tennis rackets in one person's hand. They whack from 2 rows at the same time into the pathway. Somebody follows behind them with a flame weeder and torches the potato beetles in the pathway where most of them fall. So the only way that that works is if your pathways are clear so that you can torch and there's not too much moisture. So we haven't tried that, but I'm interested to try that. And yeah, if you go to the next slide, Christine, I think it just showed about the harvest. We dig all ours by hand. I will say that my kind of lesson learned on harvesting is just wash them right away. Wash them and then store them. We store ours in a walk-in cooler at around 42 degrees. And I love growing potatoes when they work. I love growing purple potatoes and doing, a combo quart of purple and yellow and red for our CSA members. But I need to reformulate how we're going to do it if we ever do grow them again, based on the pest pressure and to a certain degree the weed pressure, just growing at a small scale. So I'll stop there. I know we're close to 7 and here for any questions.
Wowee. I want to like talk about this for hours, potentially days, I think is the reality. Thank you, Ben, and for sharing that. And also the different approaches for like scale and equipment use. I'm gonna pop let's see. I'm gonna do my best to navigate the chat. We definitely have questions here. I want to come back to and Fresh. I feel like you're doing a great job tracking the questions. We had a couple questions about specific sweet potatoes and underground pests before we dig in or talk about above ground pests. I was curious if you could talk about either Ben or Laura, underground pest management for these crops.
Yeah, the sweet potatoes, I do have voles. So things like to eat things love sweet potatoes. Rats love, oh, I've done some rat murdering. I have some terrible stories, but that was more in storage and less. The rats were more in storage and not in the field, but the voles will definitely munch in the field. And I don't know if it's just I get a good yield. I mean, it's always there, and the voles will eat some, but usually they eat the ones that are really big and they're sticking out of the soil, and it's just easy pickings. And that's sad. But overall, over the whole harvest, I end up with like a stack of these like number 2 ones. So I don't do anything to manage the voles. But they can be a problem. I don't have moles as a problem. I think someone asked that. It's never been more of a problem than what I just accept as far as the munching goes. So I don't have a solution if someone's having a real severe problem with it.
Well, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anything to add, Ben?
I'll just say that if you're in an area with heavy deer pressure, that I've had deer munch down close to 800 feet of sweet potatoes that I had protected, and they munched it through netting. They munched it through coyote urine spray. So beware if you're in that sort of an area. And if you don't have a deer fence, this was before we had our deer fence up. Um, but yeah, I don't have any experience really with voles. And I'm just about to put something in the chat that on a very small scale, you can try growing both types of potatoes in these things called root pouches, which is kind of fun, where it's this like felt cloth material. And at the end of their life cycle, when the vines have died back, you can actually just empty those things out and pour the tubers out. I've seen urban farms do that have issues with soil contamination. And I also just want to address one question in the chat about washing potatoes. Um, so we soak ours first. I think somebody asked about washing the skin away. Um, we soak ours in a tub of water first, and then a lot of that dirt comes off, and we will do a gentle spray. I've just found that not washing them makes it almost impossible to get the dirt stains off of them later. And this is just talking about potatoes, not sweet potatoes.
Right. So it sounds like there's differing storage techniques, like sweet potatoes should not be washed until they're cured, where maybe regular potatoes, if they're cured underground, they can be washed immediately after harvest. Because I've also heard differing schools of thought, like you should not wash potato until you're going to sell it because it reduces its shelf life pretty significantly. So I think I would love for both of you to speak on that experience of those. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I think the washing, not washing thing is just an edit. to some degree an individual situation. Like Ben's, he was saying he doesn't get the dirt off, but it might be your soil, like that's not a problem at my farm. I think a lot of these things, as you'll find out if you start farming and like in 15 years, it'll be like, oh, there's no rules. You just like figure kind of what's working, and it might be some part of your whole system that's maybe making it better to wash it now or better to wash it later. I think generally speaking, produce as a very general statement, as soon as you wash something, you're damaging it ever so slightly. You're slightly abrading it. You're doing all these things. And so hence you are just increasing the opportunity of introducing, any sort of pathogen or spreading it around. If you have a pathogen there, sometimes you wash it and now you've spread it all around your whole crate and now everything's going to get it. So there's these are all possibilities, but maybe if it's not a problem, but it's not some like hard fast rule, but in a general statement, like washing stuff may decrease its storage life. But in everyone's specific case, I think you can like play around with it a little bit, see what's working, see what's not based on your storage conditions, et cetera, et cetera. My sweet potatoes, I used to always wash them. This year, they did not get washed in the fall because we didn't have time. It didn't happen. So I stored them dirty. I was like, oh, we'll see. And it's been fine. We just washed 1,000 pounds of sweet potatoes that I had left over from last year because we had a good crop, and they stored beautifully. But I would wash them because my thought process was, I kind of needed them like in December. And the sweet potatoes are cold sensitive. And like my pack shed, even in like December, is 40 degrees. And I just didn't want to bring them out and then wash them in like a cold and just get them cold and wet. And I was like, that just doesn't feel like a good idea. That might affect their storage. So what I always try, and I didn't have employees in December. So honestly, I washed them because like I had the employees and it was warm, like some warm day in like October. And I was like, okay, let's get these things washed because I don't want to do it by myself in December. And I never had any problems with the storage of them washed, but they've also stored well dirty. So I don't know. Again, no rules.
Yeah, and I'll just say briefly that, we just generally grow such a small amount of potatoes and they go to our customers within probably a month after harvesting them. And therefore, there's been no issue with the water on the produce compromising the lifespan. But I would definitely think through my process more if we were storing them for 3 to 4 months. But yeah, basically like we can't grow enough given the demand that our customer base would have. So it basically is just, it's out the door within a month or less sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Which is an amazing problem to have, right, Ben?
It is.
Yeah.
That's why we are just buying in potatoes this year.
You mentioned this in the chat and thinking about sourcing thoughtfully with disease resistance or possibilities like, disease and pests travel with food and seed, right? So it's one of the reasons Colorado potato beetle is nearly impossible to eradicate is because farmers in different regions have made those pests nearly resistant to any sort of sprays, etc. So Ben, I would love to invite you to ask where you're sourcing. Laura, you mentioned this a little bit, but also like the possibility, or have you played around with saving crops for seed or slips? I think that's a really important aspect to farm longevity, viability. Like what can we save responsibly, or what can we be buying from our region or farther?
Yeah, I mean, I think we did our own slips just as a trial from some sweet potatoes I got from a local farm, but on just a very, trial scale. But I haven't really had the space to store enough seed potatoes for long enough because we just shut off our walk-in cooler at a certain point. And I think that could be cool to try. We have sourced most recently from Mythic Farm, and they're pretty local. I think Wisconsin, I forget where, maybe Blue Mounds. And I think the other places we've got it from are a little further afield. Johnny's, we've done Fedco. Um, but yeah, I think locally sourced is best. I think that scab it's a whole discussion, but I've had locally sourced stuff and have still had incidents of scab at times. So that is another thing to watch out for. But generally, yeah, that's where we're sourcing from.
Yeah. Mythic Farm is awesome. It is in Blue Mounds. I used to work there, and they're not far from me. um, so that's a good source for. Wait, what was the question? Sourcing stuff and disease pressure?
Well, I just like saving, like you
Oh
said, you
yeah,
have
yeah,
experimented saving or starting your own slips versus buying
yeah,
out for,
yeah,
disease or pest prevention.
yeah. I think especially if a small scale, I say go experiment with the sweet potato slips. That sounds like fun. If you like, I don't know. I haven't done it because I did it when I worked at Mythic Farm when I worked there. That's where we did it. But um potatoes, I when I was first started, I saved some potato seeds, and it was really great because you had them and they were like sprouting in the basement, so they were like really well chid. I just remember they like grew right away, and it was great. I think, I mean, in my experience, I mean, right, the reason we don't save the potato seed for too long is a lot of the disease pressure is viral, and then viruses just live in the seed potato. I mean, that's why we're buying it in. Um, so you could I think maybe for a few years or something, maybe, but I would like refresh your the way that these seed companies are doing it is they're buying their seed potatoes from certified, like state certified places that have grown their potatoes from a tiny little like cell at the tip of the meristem from a potato that is so baby that it hasn't gotten the virus yet. And so that's how they make virus free seed. So you could do it at your farm for a while, but then maybe just like refresh your seed every once in a while. So you don't, if you do get some virus, you can like start again. I'm not that well versed in the potato disease, and I don't know if virus probably isn't like living in your soil or anything, is it? But maybe if you have a rogue potato, you could get inoculated. That's a tough. That the seed potatoes are a tough one. I mean, they've done that because obviously in the culture at a larger cultural scale, it's such a huge crop, and it's become, apparently it's an issue in the larger scheme of things to continue to save it year after year after year when we have the disease pressure. So depending on where even at my farm, I grew for 15 years. And like for the first, like, I'd say like 8 or 9 years, my potatoes just rocked. It was awesome. And then it's just like, was like a downhill little slide to where I'm like, I'm not growing. I don't want to grow these anymore. Um, just the yield and stuff just wasn't balancing out the work and the disease pressure and the crop maintenance and everything. But anyway, those are my thoughts. But it's really fun to save your own seed and stuff. So I don't know.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I just want, because we're over time and this is an extraordinarily busy moment of the season, and I'm so grateful to Laura and Ben and everyone that showed up this evening. If we didn't answer any questions, please hop in now for like a last minute, hey, help. a scenario or send us an email. I'm gonna put our project contacts in the chat for y'all to reach out if you'd like. That's gonna anyone got that?
I
I'll
got
find it.
a question.
Yeah, and then
Lord,
go ahead.
Yeah.
Lord, did you water your sweet potatoes when they were in the ground?
Yes, I water them quite regularly. I don't know, once a week, especially when they're the baby little slips, just the plants, because they don't have roots yet, so they need that moisture to keep growing. Yeah, what weekly, like an inch or whatever on my irrigation. I just let the drip go for like an 8-hour shift. I do. Yes. So yeah, that's the answer. And the plastic mulch really helps with like some moisture retention and even moisture in for the crop. But yes,
Thank you.
weekly irrigation schedule.
Thank you for
Yeah.
that question. Then Laura, any final words before we close and let you have your day back?
I don't know. This is the best way to spend an evening. Sorry. No, I don't know. Ben, what was the biggest sweet potato you've ever grown?
Actually, it was in the middle of Chicago, and I don't remember the pounds, but I'd like to say it was close to somewhere around 2 pounds, maybe. But I'll just say that, and you probably have grown much bigger. I'll just say to folks out there that like just because we're not growing potatoes this year, I don't want that to, turn you away from growing potatoes in a future year. But I think just to really think through your approach to it because you're going to be managing that at the busiest time of year in July, August, and September when you're managing 25 other things. So can you really manage that well, given it's very labor intensive and the pest pressure? So just have a plan, like anything. Easier said than done.
That's so true. Yeah, my farm partner was just picking up potato beetles today and smashing larvae all morning. If you can't harvest food, you gotta pick potato beetles. So imagine those days ahead of you. Although I will say, in true encouragement, our city folks have a better chance. So maybe you could be the potato growers for us out here. But yeah,
Sorry, my internet just like went out on me or something.
all
I
fine.
missed the biggest potato, but I'm sure it was my
I think it was somewhere around 2 pounds, but it was in the middle of Chicago, and I don't remember it, but it seemed to be enough for about 4 to 5 people's dinner.
yeah. Awesome. Yeah, are people still on? Yeah, I don't know, closing remarks. There's a sweet potato song if anyone wants to hear it.
Yes. Okay, let's close with the sweet potato song. Any lingering questions, please email me, Fresh, Hagen, or Steven. I dropped and Laura's farm information in the chat too, so you can follow up or connect with them on your own time. I don't know if that's welcomed or we'll see how the season goes, but we are happy to field questions as we move forward. The goal is for this community to experiment and learn together. So yeah, don't hold yourself back. We're taking a summer break on this webinar series. We'll be meeting again in September. Talk all about buckwheat, which is a huge, amazing, versatile crop, both in cover, soil health, food, etc. Lots of amazing things. So stay tuned for that. We have the registration up on the website as well. Laura, you want to
Yeah,
reload your slides and find the cover
I'll
crop or the
I'll cue
potato
I'll
song?
cue it up. Um, um, the the context and just at a cultural point, oh, how do I, okay, and then back one more. So my thought about this is what I just find, food. This song is a song my dad learned in high school. Like it was a solo he had in some high school choir. And but the song is about a grasshopper sitting on a sweet potato vine and a turkey comes along and eats it. But I just love it because it's like phenologically accurate. You know what I mean? Like the timing of things, like um because literally like at the time you're harvesting the sweet potatoes, like the grasshoppers are running around the farm and the turkeys are like gobbling in the fence row. And I just love that like um our I don't know, our food makes it into a song, and it just felt like so like connected with not just farming but the world's and nature around the farm and everything. And so we sing it all the time, and I just like it has a special little place in my heart because it's just really cute. Ready, Bob?
High on the stalk of a slender twine, the grasshopper sat on the sweet tater vine. High was his elbow and high was his knee, and an entomological fellow was he. He looked on the landscape and hummed him a song, but he did not enjoy that repose very long. For a big turkey gobbler he came up to him, and he gathered him in. He gathered him in. Gathered, gathered, gathered. He gathered him in.
Oh my gosh. I'm holding that in my heart for a long time.
Okay. My
So,
dad's a bass.
wow. Thank you, everyone. And also, huge thank you to our interpreters this evening, Sung Tseng, Tasha, and Caitlin, for providing language support for our listeners and community. So, holy smokes, I'm blown away. Plant your potatoes, take care of your plants, take care of your bodies, and we'll be here in community. So, thanks all for joining.
Thank you. And you
Thank
still
you.
have time to plant sweet potatoes. If you haven't gotten them in the ground yet, you still have time. One time I didn't get them in till like the end of June and I still had a crop. So go get some slips.
All the way. Amazing.
You can find them.
Right.
Good night, y'all.
Good
Good
night.
night. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We'll be in touch.
Good night, everybody.
Good night,
Take care.
Ben. Happy farming.
You too.
Yes. Happy farming.